So today's lesson, we're going to continue with our investigation of solving for area of various polygons, but specifically today, we're going to focus on solving for the area of a trapezoid. So we should quickly review what a trapezoid is. So let's, if we need to, look back at our notes. And in doing so, we should discover that a trapezoid is a polygon. Or I guess more specifically, we should say a quadrilateral, because we know it has four sides. With exactly one pair of parallel sides. Now those pairs of parallel sides, or that one pair of parallel sides, we're going to refer to in a few minutes as the bases. There's going to actually be two bases in our trapezoids. We're used to seeing that there is a single base, say, for example, in finding the area of a rectangle. We know that's A equals base times height. And for that matter, for a triangle, we know that there's a single base. For the area of a triangle, the formula is A equals base times height divided by 2. This formula kind of looks like a combination of those two. So the formula for the area of a trapezoid is A equals, and there's going to be different variations of this, okay? A equals, we're going to write it in parentheses, B, we're going to say, call this B1, B sub 1. So this is not an exponent. It's like a little 1 that looks like an exponent that's dropped down, that's fallen down. So we say parentheses, B1 plus B2. So these are going to be our two bases, okay? And we're going to multiply, once we add those two bases together, we're going to multiply times the height. And then when we're done with that, we're going to finish up by dividing the entire result by 2. So there's really like a three-step process here, okay? So step 1 is going to be to add. Step 2 is going to be to multiply. And step 3, which is really this division bar here, or that fraction bar, is going to be to divide. And we're going to make sure we show all these steps independent of each other, okay? So step 1, we're going to add what's in the parentheses. Step 2, we're going to multiply. Step 3, we're going to divide. Now, the alternate form of this formula, which you'll see on your formula sheets, is A equals 1/2. I think it's 1/2 H B1 plus B2 in parentheses, okay? So I want us to, on our formula sheets, to actually write this formula down. I think this is the much better one for us to use, okay? So I'm going to put a big box around this, because that's the formula I want us to use. I'm going to put it, actually, I'm going to put it in green just to kind of make it stand out more, okay? So this is the one I just assumed that we not use. Okay. So it's important for us to recognize what the bases are, what the height is, and then we can go from there. All right, so here's a trapezoid. This trapezoid, we can tell, has dimensions of 18 and 12. Those are the bases, okay? So one of these we can consider as base 1. The other one of these we can consider base 2. So it's important for us to know the bases. Why don't we go back up here, okay, and say the parallel sides are always B1 and B2, okay? So once we find our parallel sides, we know what our B1 and our B2 are. So I'm actually going to, just based on this being color-coded, I'm going to outline that, and I'm going to circle the 12. I'm going to outline that and circle my 18. Those are going to be those two numbers that I'm going to put in for B1 and B2. I also know my height is that dashed perpendicular line that forms a right angle. That's my height right there. Okay, so I'm going to circle that and just point an arrow to it and call it H. So let's start by writing our formula down. A equals, parentheses, B1 plus B2 times the height divided by 2. So let's get started. So step 1, we write the formula. Step 2, we put our values in. Let's see. One of our bases, it doesn't really matter which one we call base 1, which one we call base 2, but we labeled the 12 as base 1, so we'll say 12 plus base 2 was labeled as plus 18. After we add those together, we're going to multiply by 11. That's our height. And then after we're done with that, as the third step of the solving, we're going to divide all that by 3. And that's just following order of operations. So let's see what we get. 18 plus 12, that gives me 40. I still have to multiply by 11. I'll multiply times 11 and divide all of that by 2. Let's see. 40 times 11, I'm going to stop and do that on my calculator, is 440. So now moving on to the multiplying. So 440 divided by 2. Now I move on to my last step, dividing by 2. And I should get that my area is 220. That's my answer. Don't forget to label, whoops, millimeters squared. So we just need to make sure that we follow the process. We write the formula, we substitute what we know. Our base 1, base 2 go into the parentheses, and that becomes the first step of my process, where I add in the parentheses, followed by multiplying that result as my second step in my process, followed by my division, because the fraction bar is the third step in my process, and that gives us the answer that we see as 220 millimeters squared. So the next problem you're going to do on your own. I will just at least get things highlighted for you. So let's again write down the formula. A equals parentheses, whoops. Let's try that again. A equals parentheses, B1 plus B2 times the height divided by 2. Well, let's identify. Now, don't get thrown off. I know this trapezoid is upside down, but we can clearly see what the parallel sides are. There's one parallel side is 7. That's one of my bases. The other parallel side is 4. That's the other base. So why don't we call this one base 1, this one base 2. There's that perpendicular length formed at a right angle. So that's our height. And you notice these two other dimensions are of no use to us, so we can even cross them out. Okay? So substitute what you know. Base 1, 7, plus base 2, 4, times the height, 2, followed by dividing by 2. The rest of this you're on your own. So finish solving by first doing your multiplying, second doing your first doing your adding, second doing your multiplying, third doing your division. Okay? So I don't want to confuse you with those, but those are your steps. So step 1, add, step 2, multiply, step 3, divide. And then you're all set. So finish this up, and there'll be a Google form for you also to complete as well. And we'll do more review in class.